And so the final thing we want to talk about today is sort of a controversy that you were kind of involved in on Twitter, involving the former president and potential kind of walking up to the line of potential crime involving a gun sale. If you want to kind of detail the
sort
people.
Of claiming that he committed a crime, to be honest, or at least his campaign did. Former President Trump was at a campaign stop at Palmetto State Armory in South Carolina, just talking with people in the shop, and somebody showed him a gun that had his face on it, which, if you've ever been to like a trade show or even in a number of a lot of gun stores will have this gun. There's a couple companies that make guns that have his face and 45th president, engraved into them. And which actually kind of made his reaction a little bit odd to me, because he was very excited about this and acted as though he had never seen one of these before, which I find pretty hard to believe. But regardless, that's not the important part of the story. He then said he was going to buy one. And then the person showing it to him actually said he would give them the gun, and he didn't have to buy it. But then Trump said, no, I'm going to buy one. And then the video sort of cuts off. They're doing like just a little photo op thing, and they take pictures with the gun. And the South Carolina Attorney General is there while this is all happening. And then, you don't see him actually try to buy the gun in the video. But then his campaign spokesman announces that he bought this gun. He actually did, in fact, buy this Glock that has his face on it, which, by the way, I think it was a 9mm Glock. Which just feels like a missed opportunity. I think most of these you see them on guns that are chambered in 45 because he was the 45th president, and that makes sense. Like Auto Ordnance makes 1911s that have his face, and they make a Thompson that has his face because those are 45 caliber firearms. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked on the actual fairly serious story that I'm trying to get across here. So his campaign claimed that he did buy this gun. And, when he stopped there, and I should have written about this a while back, because as soon as he was indicted, I thought this was going to become an issue. Because when you're a pro-Second Amendment candidate, or you run as a pro-Second Amendment candidate, oftentimes the campaign trail, people try to give you guns, right, as commemorative guns. It's not an uncommon thing to happen. And it's perfectly legal in basically every other time this has happened. But unfortunately, for Donald Trump, he's under a felony indictment in multiple jurisdictions, and federal law prohibits anyone under felony indictment from receiving new firearms, which effectively means you can keep the guns that you already have. It's a bit of a weird law, to be honest with you, for this reason, but you can keep the firearms you have, and you can shoot them, you can handle them, all that. But you can't get new ones. You can't buy them. You can't receive them as gifts. Things of that nature. Whether you can take photo ops with them, I think is less clear. I don't think I've ever seen anyone charged for something like that. So he's probably okay on that front. I guess it depends on how far a prosecutor would want to push this definition of receive. There really isn't. It's not defined in the statute. But regardless, once I saw he was at this gun store, I tweeted this could get interesting because he can't legally buy a gun. And then then all that happened. His campaign claimed he legally bought it. And I said, did this actually happen? Because it would be illegal for him to do that. And that's when, I was trying to figure out somebody on the ground. There was a CNN reporter there. I think there was a reporter from the Daily Caller. And it created a whole firestorm, and the campaign eventually deleted their tweets and said, no, he did not buy the gun. Which actually in and of itself is kind of unusual thing. I mean, how often does the Trump campaign admit that they lied about something?
Right.
I don't know that I've really seen that at all in this campaign. But they did in this case, or at least tacitly admitted it, because they deleted the tweets and they said he didn't buy the gun. I honestly figured he didn't the whole time, because I wouldn't think that somebody at Palmetto State Armory would actually sell him the gun. Because the other side of it is it's not just illegal for Trump, it would be illegal for them too. It would be illegal for anyone who's knowingly trying to sell a gun or give a gun to somebody under felony indictment. That's also a crime. So I know that a lot of people, there's a lot of Trump fans on Twitter who got very upset with me and just don't understand how the gun laws work and tried to claim a number of things. The first one is that it's not illegal because he hasn't been convicted. Because most people know that convicted felons can't possess guns. And if he were convicted, he wouldn't be able to even touch the firearm. But a lot of people don't understand that you also can't receive new guns when you're under felony indictment, even though this is a question on the background check. I understand most people, even if you bought a gun, don't have all the questions memorized, but perhaps before yelling at somebody pointing these things out, you should do 5 seconds of research on this stuff. But it is literally a question on the background check. That section where if you've bought enough guns, you probably have the pattern recognized of what the right, yes, no answers are. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's just questions where you got to put yes and no, and there's a certain pattern because I guess they have one that tries to sort of trip you up so you don't just all one column there. Anyway, regardless, the other issue that everyone brought up, which is something that I mentioned when I first was talking about this, is there has been challenges to this prohibition in federal law, right? There have even been a couple of successful ones. There was one that got some media attention, including from us. We wrote you wrote the story.
Yeah.
But this is why I remembered all this. This is why it was in my head when he got indicted, because last year there was a man who was facing charges for this exact crime, and he used the Second Amendment defense and won his case, right? And the district judge in that case found that the prohibition is unconstitutional and dismissed his indictment. And so, of course, people don't really understand. Your average person doesn't understand how federal courts really work and what different rulings actually mean in practice. But so they just assume that because this case had happened, that this law is no longer in effect. But that's not true.
Right.
District court rulings don't have any binding precedent on other courts at all, right? Like appeals court level rulings, circuit court rulings do on their circuit, right? And this case was in the Fifth Circuit, which just doesn't include South Carolina anyway. But they also rarely impact enforcement of a federal law across the country. This has been a controversial thing over the last few years. Nationwide injunctions, the Supreme Court has pushed back on that. Having a single district court judge block enforcement of a law across the country is not something they usually are very happy with.
Right.
And you've seen this come up in a number of gun rights cases since the last year or two, because, for instance, the pistol brace case. I think the plaintiffs wanted a nationwide injunction, but the court wouldn't give them one, right? Because of this, because the Supreme Court has, indicated they don't like this practice that had gotten kind of out of hand, I think, over the last 5 or 6 years. And so anyway, there have also been a number of judges that have actually upheld this injunction or this prohibition, including one who did the Bruin analysis and came to the opposite conclusion of the district judge in Texas. So the question is unsettled. There is a constitutional question here, right? No doubt, especially since Bruin, but it's not one that has been settled, and this law is still in effect. So if he had gone through with this purchase, it would have been a crime for, everyone involved, really, at least once he received the gun. Now, this was a handgun, so he would have had to transfer it from that store to a licensed dealer in Florida. I think this is why I was skeptical that he actually bought this gun from the beginning, because there's no way and nobody along the line would point out that you can't do this. I mean, even when he's just going through to fill out the background check, you would get to the question whether or not you're under felony indictment. And there's no credible, I think, argument that the people selling him the gun would be unaware that he's under felony. Everybody in the country knows he's under felony indictment.